going to have to shoot this thing and empty my gun into it, or it's going to rip me apart.
Welcome to the Bigfoot Society podcast. In this episode, we talk to Sean, retired police officer, who had a stunning Sasquatch encounter in northern Michigan that he won't soon forget, and I'm sure you won't either. What happened to Sean when he came face to face with the Sasquatch, and what steps did he have to take to get out of there alive? Find out this and more on this week's episode of Bigfoot Society. All right, I've got Sean with us tonight. He does have a encounter to share. How are we doing tonight, Sean?
I'm doing very well. How are you doing tonight?
Oh, I'm doing great. We are just hanging out in Iowa out here, gearing up for maybe some snow tomorrow. But it's always a great night when I'm able to talk to someone about what they have experienced to help listeners figure out what they've experienced too. But Sean, go right ahead and let's start chatting. So fill me in what we've got, what we had happen to you here.
Well, November, it was on the 13th in 1993. We were what turned out to be the last trip to the hunting cabin that my dad and my Uncle Mick built after World War II in Glennie, Michigan. I'd gotten up about a week early. I had planned on doing some fishing and some bow hunting before rifle season started, so I was up by myself. And, usually the first guy there gets to, cut the wood and do things like that. And it was nothing unusual, going on. And I had come up from Arizona. I was born and raised here, but my mom's family was from Michigan. And, so we had a lot of connections back there. And that was just an area where my dad kind of fell in love with too. But anyway, so I had been up doing the chores and, it was just, things started feeling a little strange. It wasn't like I could really put my finger on anything, but, and I'd been a police officer by this time for nearly 5 years. So I had what I would consider to be kind of a heightened sense of awareness when things were watching me or things were strange, and it just felt off. So I don't know, but otherwise it was normal. Yeah, if that makes any sense.
When you said it felt off,
sure.
That I find that really interesting. Can you describe like what felt off about the situation?
It felt like I was being watched, not in a predatory way. I'm a real big believer in pheromones. And chemical reactions, because, I haven't been a police officer. I've been around predatory and feral humans, for about 5 years. And I was pretty well convinced by that time. And the consensus was when they're giving off pheromones, our bodies are hardwired to pick that up from years and years of survival and, the prehistorical, instinctive things like that. So you develop that sense, and everybody has it. It just felt like there was something around that was watching me. It felt like the hairs on the back of my neck would stand up every once in a while if I was facing away from the tree line. And it's a really coniferous forested area up there. It's a lot of pine, very, very thick. So you can't really see into the tree line much more than a few feet. Um, but I didn't see any movement, didn't hear any movement, but I felt like I was being watched, if that makes any sense at all. It's just, it was a feeling that I had. It wasn't, I know some people talk about, what do they call it? Mind speak, things like that, where they're being communicated with. It was none of that. It was purely biological. So I don't know if that helps, but it's the best way that I can describe it. If I had to go to court, that's what I would say. It was just a gut feeling. There were no smells. I remember there was nothing smelled odd. Very piney, very. And it was November, so there's a lot of leaf cover on the ground, and so the leaves were damp, they were wet. So that smell, it smelled normal. There was nothing that I could put my finger on that any scents that were out of whack.
How far in the woods is this location? Just for people that might not be familiar with the town that you had mentioned.
Oh, okay. It's about, as the crow flies, about 15 miles outside of the town itself, but off the main road, it's about 4.5 miles. And it's all 2-track, old fire lanes, and like residentially cleared roadways. So you're responsible to keep your own roadways open to your properties down there. And there were, back then, I don't know how many would be there now, but back then, maybe between the road and the main road and where we were, 4 other cabins. So it was really remote. And we only had about a half acre cleared where the trees had been cut down. So very, very thick. And that's about where we were.
I can already tell that whatever you experienced affected you in a way that has not affected everyone that I've talked to so far. You definitely, this is going to be a very interesting story for sure.
Well, it doesn't feel like a lot of people try to attach words like, PTS to it and things of that nature. It wasn't that. It was more that, looking back, it's kind of a sense of wonderment. It's like, oh, now I can look back 30 years later and go, that's really cool. Because I've always been not necessarily interested in quote unquote Bigfoot or that whole thing. It's like, yeah, I saw it on In Search Of when I was a kid. Okay. But it was never really much more than a passing interest. But so when I saw it, it was like, wow, they were right. These things were real. So, but I mean, it's opened up. It's opened my mind to possibilities that I didn't think were there before. And I tend to be an open-minded skeptic. I want to be able to see it, touch it, feel it. As far as evidence goes, I don't take anyone's word for anything unless there's corroborating evidence to support it. So that was like the corroborative evidence that I needed once I had seen it. But anyway, so yeah, it was about 3 days, and things were just being. I just felt like I'd been watched. But as I said before, no sounds, no smells. There was nothing that wasn't in place. Everything just seemed normal other than that. But, so I'd been cutting wood and doing all the chores. And, we had a shooting range at the cabin. And, so I wanted to make sure that my rifle was zeroed in, and I wanted to make sure that My pistol was zeroed in with the ammo that I brought because I was actually going to hunt with my pistol. And so I set up the target and I started to shoot. And I don't know, I probably fired 5 rounds out of my rifle and, verified that it was zeroed in. I think I fired, if I remember correctly, I fired like 1 magazine out of my pistol. And it was a Glock 20, 10 millimeter. And, it was, I think, and it's these stupid little details. They keep coming back, but it was, I had about an inch high, which, would have been perfect. There's a long shot up there because the woods are so dense, maybe 25 yards. I think the longest shot I ever made on a deer was probably closer to 30. And, that was over hunting there since I was 14 years old. But what stands out is when I got done, I heard, as I was packing up, I heard like an oomph. It was a drawn out, breathy oomph. Like it started off like it was coming out of someone's stomach, the sound. Oomph. And it had a really distinct F sound at the end. And, that just kind of stopped me dead in my tracks. I had to look around and I couldn't see anything. And it was weird because I thought, wow, it's a bear. And we had bear up there, but, I've only ever seen one. I'd seen tracks, I'd seen scat, but I hadn't really seen the bear. So that was the first thing that happened. Then I got to thinking, like there's nothing out here that makes a sound with an F sound at the end. It's a sibilant sound. You need humanoid lips to be able to make that sound. But anyway, I put that out. I'm like, okay, finished what I'm doing. I cleaned up, and then I was about halfway back to the cabin. And it was only like 40 or 50 feet that surrounded it. And it came from another side of me, then I heard it again. Like, woof. And now I figured somebody was messing with me. I went in, my investigative brain turned on. I'm like, all right, now there's somebody's got to be out there. So I yelled and, I don't want to, the profanity that I yelled, but, I told them, all right, they better show themselves or, things were going to get ugly. And nothing did. And I moved a little bit more, and then I started hearing like really distinct, heavy footfalls. And they were going away from me and definitely bipedal. Quadruped animals tend to be much more, even when they're moving through heavy brush, you might hear the brush, but you don't really hear the footfalls because they're, more of a gentle-footed animal. I mean, even my horse, my horses are walking. They're, you can hear the clops, but you don't, it doesn't stomp almost. And that was the sound. But there's also the part of me that's saying, okay, boots, they're heavy hunting boots. It's, either teenagers up here screwing around or, whatever it was. I was trying to find that logical, this is what it is, definitive in my brain, eliminating other possibilities. So I was, excuse me, really just thinking that it was a human being. But yeah, but it got quiet after that. I went in the cabin, fixed myself some lunch. And at some point I had kind of fallen asleep. I was, sit in my chair, and it wasn't long after that, there was just I heard a boom, a really, really loud boom that startled me awake. And I was disoriented enough. I didn't know. I mean, obviously I didn't know what it was. I knew it wasn't a gunshot. And then I thought, well, maybe it was like the little A7s were flying up. They were Selfridge, or not Selfridge, but Wood Smith Air Force Base is in Oscoda, which is about 20 miles away. And a lot of times the guys will fly down along the Osalo River and they'll get low and they'll go really fast and you'll get a boom, even though they're not like it's not a supersonic plane, but you get that boom when they go through there. So that's kind of what I was thinking it was. But it was just all these different strange things all of a sudden happening. I was just not really comfortable with what was going on. And so anyway, I'm just trying to okay, calm yourself. I wasn't scared. I was irritated. I was angry because it just felt like people were messing up my week. I decided to go and use the restroom, and we had an outhouse out the back of the cabin. And that's, if you had to do sit down business, that's where you went. We had a chemical toilet inside. That's really where the women went when they came up on the weekends, because you had to clean it yourself. So I go outside and I'm just one more time, it was that feeling was there, but so I go out to do my business and I just hear that oomph again. And now I'm like, all right, no, this has gone beyond anything that is in my experience. I'm done, but I'm still getting angry. I'm getting angry. My patience is gone. And I just went back inside, and I was sitting at the small kitchen table and I made some coffee. And, then I just trying to run through what is going on. And I don't have any kind of context, any clue, I was getting rattled by this time. And I don't know. I don't know, Jeremiah. I'm sorry. I'm just not doing real good at this because there's a lot of things that are coming back right now.
Sean. What time of day would you say that was where you went out to the outhouse, got rattled again?
It was about it was about 3:00.
Okay.
And between 3 and 3:15, because the where we were, the clearing around the house was, about a half acre was cleared, but it was kind of patchy. So when that November sun is just about hitting the top of the trees, it's right about 3:00 on its way down. Because by 4:00 it would be kind of that grayish dusk, and then by 5:00, done. You're dark. Because the sun's below the trees and you're all in shadow. You might looking straight up, you'd still have more, a little bit more light that you could see like straight above you. But as far as illuminating the area, by 5:00 you're done. It's one of those places where, other than artificial light from cabins or a flashlight, there's no street lights. There's no, so it's dark. And unless you've experienced it, especially in those November days where, it tends to be more overcast in northern Michigan, you can't see your hand in front of your face. That's how dark it is. It's that deep, almost cave-like dark.
When you heard the oomph sounds, can you describe a little bit how loud that sound felt to you when you heard it?
I almost felt the vibration in my chest.
Okay.
Like there was an actual sound hitting a wall. Have you ever been in a very tight quarters, so like a very small hallway or a basement, and been close to a wall, and you've spoken loudly, and you feel that sound come back at you.
Sure. Yeah.
And actually, yeah, it felt like that, except it was a very open area. And it felt almost like the sound when it hit me was, say, an open-handed hand just pushing really lightly on my chest. But it was very, it was quick, but it was spread out. So it was like a big wave, but like just someone were to give you like an open-handed push on your chest. And that's what it felt like. You know, there was a distinct wave to it.
And see how that would be agitating for sure.
Well, yeah, but it was one of those things where I've had experiences before in my life, not in the woods, not anything outdoor related, but in a professional context, where you're kind of hypersensitive and hyper aware of everything that's going on around you because you're in fight or flight. You're in what would turn out to be either a dangerous situation with a predatory human, or you're clearing a building. You know, so you're just so focused on what is going on. And that's how I was sensing that, almost that sound. So it was outside of outside of what I would consider to be an experience for there, but I've experienced similar feelings other places.
Sure.
You know, because at the cabin I was always totally relaxed. You know, just it was that one place where I could always go and decompress. I could get down to the lake and fish, you know, take a walk in the woods, go after squirrel, whatever I wanted to do. And I never, ever felt like I needed to be vigilant for, you know, two-legged predators, or there was anything that I wouldn't be able to handle with, you know, a loud get out of here, you know, or, you know, throwing a rock at something. You know, it was a really peaceful place.
That makes more sense now why you would be agitated then, because it was encroaching on.
Yeah.
It was messing with your perfect place, your happy place, you know, fill in the blank, and maybe something else entirely.
Yeah. Well, and you know, and like I said, I work for a city department in Arizona, and you know, so we had good vacation time. I had 3 weeks every year. You know, after 5 years, because I worked so much overtime, we would get vacation time based on how many hours how much we'd worked. And, you know, back in those days, I didn't make a lot of money. I made a decent living for the area, but I worked a lot of overtime because, you know, I had just bought my own, I bought a condo, you know, so I had my own home, and I didn't want to be in a lot of debt. So I worked a lot of overtime. And so that 3 weeks was my, okay, driving to Michigan, you know, going to see my maternal grandparents, you know, my dad's going to be up, you know, my Uncle Mick will be up, you know, be kind of the decompress from everything time.
Sure.
But I like that week by myself where I didn't have to talk to anybody if I didn't choose to. You know, unless I drove into town, which I rarely did. I didn't have to, you know, occasionally you might run into someone that was, you know, coming up to hunt, but that was pretty rare. So, yeah, but yeah, it did. It ruined my vacation, I guess.
Man. Yeah.
You know, like you said.
That is wild. Yeah. Okay. So it's around 3:30 in the afternoon. You're headed back into the cabin.
Yeah, definitely in the 3 o'clock hour.
Yeah.
Yeah, I went back, went back into the cabin. You know, as I remember, you know, I started some dinner, you know, I was just, but still at the same time, while I'm trying to make dinner, I'm like, almost grumbling and cussing to myself. You know, you have those internal conversations where, you know, someone's messing with me and, you know, durba, durba, dur. Right. You know, that like Yosemite Sam cussing under your breath. Yeah. You know, it was just irritating. Exactly. You know, I mean, what, exactly. I don't know any other way to describe it. It was just that. It's like when your kids are running wild but they're not doing anything wrong, and you want to cuss them out, but you don't because you're a good dad. Sure. But you go out in the garage and you cuss to yourself. You know, that's what it felt like. So, anyway, I went back in the cabin, started doing some dinner, and I had to go back outside, and it was, you know, I had to do some stand-up business. You know, you go to the outhouse, you got to do a douche. You don't if you got to, you know. So I go back outside, and about halfway between about, I don't know, 40 to 50 feet between the back porch and the outhouse, which faces out onto the swampy area that, well, it's not really swamp. It's wet all the time. You know, we really have swamps in Michigan, but it's a big wet, like goes kind of high in the summer, low in the fall and the winter. But you just don't go back there, you know, unless you want your boots getting sucked off your feet with that really black silty mud. But anyway, I'm going out, and from around the unexposed side of the outhouse and a tree, it stepped out. And I don't know why it stepped out. I don't know why it chose to come out and look at, but now I'm looking at it like right at, you know, and I'm 6'4", and this thing had to have a foot on me, maybe a little bit more. You know, and I think my best estimation when I looked at the tree that it was near, you know, it had to be 8 feet. And I was 10 yards away from it. You know, max, I was about 30 feet. And I even now, you know, it's going back into that moment. I've been looking at this thing, and it's like I'm tongue-tied now just talking about it. And it, you know, and it did it again, and then just woof. And this time I felt it almost just go through me. You know, that oomph was so powerful. It just like a wave that just went right through my body. And all I'm thinking, it was just, oh my God, you know, what am I going to do? You know, but then I didn't do anything. I just stood there, and I'm like, okay, don't run, you know? And I think, honestly, that's really what I wanted to do. I was just like, all right, I'm going to run now. You know, that calm voice you get in your head where it has that totally stupid, really fast conversation with yourself. Yeah. And I'm like, I'm going to run now. No, that's not going to work because it can reach out and grab me. And it's going to, you know, it was just like, I felt like a cartoon moment with myself. So I just looked at it, and I looked, and it's looking back at me, and now, you know, there were no whites to its eyes. You know, that was the really weird thing. And it's just, it, you know, conical head, no neck, looked like if Arnold Schwarzenegger had a bigger brother who put on another 100 pounds, you know, it was massive. The mass of this creature, I could barely describe. And the long arms, the legs were like tree stumps. You know, the hair on it was even in like that fading light, you like almost the tips of it were glistening. Not like sparkly, like you hear people talking about, but just like a very natural hair sheen that you would see on like a new growth coat on your horses, just before the fall. Like very well groomed and very well kempt. Like it worked to keep itself clean, I guess. I don't know. That's that impression that I got in the moment, but it was huge. But the face was very human. The cheekbones were very pronounced. It had a flatter nose. So it was wider, not really, not really pronounced. Coming out from the face. Heavy brows, and the eyes were just really deeply inset. It was just the length that I was able to look at it. That impression was there was something there. Looking into those eyes, there was something there other than a blank, dumb animal. There was an intelligence there. And I'm not saying it was a human intelligence, but definitely, this creature had an awareness of itself and what was going on around it. And I remember it was really weird because before it went oomph, it's almost like it lifted its head just a little bit and it sniffed the air.
Really?
It's like these little details. It was like, but then the oomph. So, I don't know. It just, and then it moved a little bit, almost imperceptibly. And I put my hand on my pistol. And when I did that, then it just made this like a sound like that started with an M and like through pursed lips, but it was really, and that hit me like a wave, and it seemed like it got taller in the moment. And I know that's dumb as it sounds dumb that it seems like it got taller, but then I think that maybe because then it tensed up, so it stood a little bit more erect. And all I could think was, oh shit, I'm gonna have to shoot this thing and empty my gun into it, or it's gonna rip me apart. But then it looked off. It looked off to its right. But when it did, it kind of swung its whole body and like lifted its head a little bit. I don't know, trying to get that jawbone to clear those big shoulders. Because, like I said, it didn't have a neck, and it's. But then it looked, and then it just ran. Trees, not big trees, but like saplings cracked it as it went, like it was making a new trail. And even though I couldn't see that after it got in, like within, say, a second and a half into the tree line, I couldn't see it, but I could still see where it was going based on the tree shaking and, so larger things that were visible. And, it was just, I was just amazed at that point, and scared. And I made a beeline back to the cabin, and I made sure that, the shotgun was off the wall and loaded. My rifle, I mean, it was just almost like I had to, fortify myself. And it was, I don't know. It was just insanity a moment, the mad minute, as we would call it. So, but I don't know. Admitting to the fear that, I don't know. It's, but that was my sighting. That's,
I
didn't see it again.
Wow. I mean, just hearing the story, I can tell this. Yeah, I mean, this story has affected me. That's intense, man. Like, I have some questions for you, Sean, about that, if that's okay. When
absolutely, go ahead.
So you saw it make the oomph sound. Could you tell if it was making it with its mouth?
Well, yeah, I mean, because the cheeks, the fleshy part of the cheeks under the cheekbones, they puffed up, they rounded out, almost like you were like whistle, that where you see that they're filling up with air, and then when it made the sound, that I can see the lip going to the teeth, like it was articulating, I know this sounds a little bit silly, but it almost had a cartoonish element to it. When the way the over exaggerated things they do in cartoons, to make it look, that was how it felt. So, but yeah, that was, and I know the one, the sound, it definitely pursed its lips and put its lips tightly together. So,
what?
I mean, that was my conversation with Bigfoot.
Yeah, that was your back and forth with Bigfoot for sure. That would last you for the rest of your life.
Yeah, it was different shades of like a reddish brown.
Okay.
And there was some black. It wasn't not like it was camouflage, but just the way that the color was hitting it. It in the light, it was much more red brown where the light was hitting it, but where it was dark and in shadow, like the one quarter of it, it was almost black. Okay. So I don't know. It was like, have you ever seen a black bear in the woods? And then they're more natural, they're not like being cared for in a zoo, how their hair just kind of absorbs a lot of light. Mm-hmm. That was the impression that I got, but there was a definite reddish brown hue to it in the lighted areas. Wow. So, it's definitely, partially photoreactive and not, and I don't know. I think that, and I'm trying to remember, an anthropology class that I took 30 years ago, more of a hollow hair tends to do that. That doesn't have the, oh gosh, I can't remember what, but that some animal hair that's hollow for insulation can do that.
Yeah.
So,
did you see any tracks around the cabin at all?
I saw like pressure impressions.
Okay.
But it's November. All the leaves have fallen off the deciduous trees.
Yeah.
So it's really, there's a lot of leaf cover, like pretty thick. So no, I didn't see any tracks. There were impressions, but those were anything could have made those.
Yeah.
So there was nothing that I would say that's a track. I would say might be, but
right.
With maybe a 10% being sure. I mean, looking back with the context, I could say, yeah, it probably walked. This is probably where it walked.
Yeah.
But there was nothing in it that I could say, oh, look, that's a Bigfoot track.
So did you stay in the night in that cabin, or did you leave pretty quick after?
Oh, no, I stayed.
Okay.
No, I say what's really funny is because, looking back, it was like, um, I made sure all the guns were close to hand, and where I slept in the cabin was in one of the corners. I had a bed there that I had ever since I was a kid because it was right near a really tall window. And you got to imagine the cabin was built out of logs back in the late 40s. So, my dad and my uncle had used, just about every, uh, recovered and surplus window they could find. So nothing really matched. So there was this really big window, and that's where my bed was. So I used to like to open the window, even if it was just a crack when the weather was cold, just because I like the smell and I like to hear the woods and things like that. But I wouldn't sleep. I didn't sleep there that night. I slept on one of the couches. It was against one of the more solid walls that was by the big fireplace because there's a really big stone fireplace in there. And it was like, nothing is going to stop it from coming in. But at least this way, if it decides to come in, I'm going to, I'll have time to, see it and point a gun at it before it eats me.
Absolutely.
It was that ridiculousness,
Yeah.
I'm like, trying to make my tactical situation better, realizing that if they really wanted a piece of me, there probably wasn't a lot I could do.
No, not at all.
So, yeah, maybe if I got to the shotgun quick enough, maybe, there were a lot of ifs. I had been in 2 critical incidents. As a police officer, I knew that I could and would handle myself. But at the same time, that's against other human beings. It might be related to us, but it was a hell of a lot bigger than anyone I ever arrested on the street.
Wow.
So I was just like, well, shit. I'm going to do what I can do. And I'm going to just try to put it out of my mind. I'm going to read, put a movie in the VCR, whatever. And so that was my feeling at the time. But I went back inside and I just decided that, if I had to go to the bathroom again, I was using the inside.
Yeah, absolutely.
That was.
The rest of that night, did you hear anything out of the ordinary? Any like weird knocks or howls or vocalizations or anything weird like that? No, because everything that I did hear, I was convinced was Bigfoot. Yeah, the rest of the night, it was, I always slept in the corner of, and it was like 24 by 24 on the interior dimensions of the cabin. It was like one big room with rooms that had been added on later, but I always slept in this corner because there was a super single bed, and it was right by the window. And I didn't care what time it was. I like to have the window cracked a little bit, and, be able to listen and smell. And it was just, that was my bed. And that night, there was no way. I slept over by one of the big solid walls that the big fireplace was kind of formed a corner. And there was no way I was going to be near the window. And that was where I kind of fought it up. I had the shotgun on the table, my rifle, my pistol, probably my knife. I mean, it was just that weird moment of, I'm making rationally irrational decisions. It's like, yes, have the shotgun loaded with slugs, yes, have my rifle close by. I was a cop, for crying out loud. I always had my pistol. But it was just one of those things where, even though the cabin was solidly built, I knew that if it wanted in, it was going to get in. Absolutely.
But I didn't feel that. I didn't feel any malevolence. I didn't feel anything predatory, but there was a lot of like post-critical incident over-awareness, a lot of things. And it was, my decision was, I'm not going to let it get me. But even though I didn't feel like it was wanting to get me, it was just that human, I'm going to do what I have to do to make it. Anyway, the rest of the night was really uneventful. I mean, it was normal, sounds, but of course, to my mind, everything was Bigfoot.
Right,
a chipmunk
exactly.
chittering outside was Bigfoot.
Yeah.
The trash pandas, trying to get into the garbage, they were Bigfoot. Even though I'd heard the raccoons, so you hear the raccoons, they're Bigfoot. That's, it was that feeling, going on through the night. And I fell asleep at some point. I probably earlier than I thought, just because the adrenaline dump had just drained me. And I woke up the next morning. I made coffee. I was much more pensive as I was moving around. I'm like, okay, looking here, looking there, opening the back door, not getting into the fatal funnel, checking my egress. It was almost like I was coming out of a building in a tactical situation, just because I wanted to see before, but everything felt okay. Yeah. When I stepped out into the light, I'm like, okay, everything feels okay. It felt more normal than it had, but I still felt, I knew now at this point, it was out there, but it was almost that relief in knowing, okay, I know what it is. It hasn't hurt me, and I'm assuming they've been there, a heck of a lot longer than we've been going there.
Longer than a cabin, probably. Yeah.
Well, yeah, exactly. It's, because, and up in that area, there's still, there's a lot of agriculture out there, a lot of cornfields, a lot of, dairy, a lot of, there's pig farms and everything, in that county, plus a lot of, fish opportunities, and, there's beaver up there, there's the deer. So there's, a pretty wide diet. So if they live where the food is, that's where the food is. But it just felt like, okay, it doesn't want to hurt me. I don't want to hurt it. We're just going to live and let live. So, but anyway, the old man shows up, Grandpa shows up, and, we had that conversation, and it's, all I said was, I know. I told him what happened. I said, I know.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
And he never would say anything else about it.
Never talked about, oh, wow. So he had stuff happen. He wouldn't talk about it. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Oh, man. What an encounter. That's amazing. Thank you for sharing, Sean. I mean, have you gone to that place since then?
No, it burned down. Not too long after that. There was a big fire up there. Yeah. Yeah. And they, and they sold the property, and,
okay.
It was just, they were going to kind of go to different places, and, had different ways of hunting in mind now after that, and different friends. So, but yeah, that's it. That's
incredible. Sean, I'm privileged to have you share that on the podcast. Thank you so much.
No, you're welcome. I feel like I was stepped all over myself, doing it. But yeah, let me know when it comes out, so I can hear how bad I sounded.
Nah, it sounded great. I will definitely let you know that, Sean. Thanks so much for hanging out tonight, and I will be in touch for when it releases and all that. Thank you, Ann. Become a supporting member of the Bigfoot Society podcast by going to www.patreon.com/the Bigfoot Society and receive extra episodes and early ad-free episodes as well. If you've got a personal Bigfoot encounter you would like to submit for me to share on the podcast, please head on over to www.bigfootsocietypodcast.com. There you'll find the Share Your Bigfoot Encounter form a little lower on the page, and please take a minute to share as many details as you can. Please state if the encounter is anonymous or what name you would like associated with the encounter. And as always, thanks for listening.